Looks like Ashley's joining.
Yeah, I can't believe it. This is a full house. We haven't had one of these in a while. We just need Jason, I guess.
I do apologize.
What are you apologizing for?
Party can start now because I'm here.
We're ready.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year. Hope everyone had a great Christmas and New Year celebration. Why don't we get rolling here with a roll call? Irma, if you would so oblige.
Yes. Jeff Miller.
Here.
Mark May.
Here.
Ashley Morey. Ashley Morey.
She's joining. She's not quite on yet.
Jeremy McKay.
Here.
John Hannum.
Present.
Jason Stacks. Jason Stacks. Okay. Wait. Samantha Ross.
Present.
Mark Smith.
Here.
Thomas Crozier. And Justin Linden.
Here.
You could correct me if I'm.
It's close enough.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Irma. Well, again, good morning. Has everyone had an opportunity to look over the agenda? And if so, would entertain a motion to approve or amend?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
A motion by Sam and second by Mark. Thank you. Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. Unanimous. And then moving down is the minutes. Everyone have an opportunity to go listen to this thing or watch it because it's riveting. If so, would entertain a motion.
Yeah, I'll motion.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Second.
Second by Justin. Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Oh, there's Sam. Thank you. Unanimous. We will move on from there. Thank you. Doesn't look like there's any public comment. So with that, Tori, you are on deck, ready to roll. Let's talk budget. It's exciting.
You guys are moving so fast. I'm gonna have to talk slow. Prolong this thing. Go till 9.
We don't. That's okay. There's things we can be doing.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. Bear with me. I'm going to share. Can everybody see my presentation?
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. So we're starting a new calendar year, but we're also gearing up for the fiscal year budget calendar. So what happens at the first of the calendar year with the city process is, the advisory boards and commissions meet, discuss, make recommendations, and then those recommendations get rolled into the overall city budget package that really starts to take off about March. And I'll talk about that a little bit more if you want to follow along as the broader city council and the budget committee discuss aspects of the budget. The fiscal year, the way the calendar is set up financially is end of June, July to the next June, July, basically. So it gets kind of weird. We have project carryovers. Internally, it's always the thing, like there's some that reference, we just moved out. Well, we're still in the fiscal calendar, the fiscal year of 22-23, about to enter 23-24. So there's just some that just, don't like that reference. So they'll just, reference when we get into fiscal year 23-24, they'll just reference 2024. And it's confusing because you're still in calendar year, sometimes 2023. So it's just interesting. One of those nuances of local government. But that's how the process works. So at the start of the calendar year, really, typically we miss January. I think there are a lot of people that were just getting back from various trips, and this is we're lucky this time because it's a little bit after the holiday, but it is a difficult one for a quorum sometimes. So it's been canceled in the past, but the budget committee has requested additional time. We're starting this sooner. So with the New Year's resolution, a lot of people are kind of making that shift of, people traveled, kind of progressing beyond 2022 and into 2023, and we're doing the same now with the budget. I sent a memo to you guys. Hopefully everyone received it. If not, I could have Irma resend it. It's basically context into what we're talking about. And as far as budget process goes for the recommendation, no action today. So what will happen is you guys will have a chance to review these items. And then at the next meeting is where we'd be requesting a recommendation, an action from the group. And we'll have Michael Brown, he's the finance manager for the urban development department. And he'll be able to speak to a little bit more detail on funding and other budget aspects. But the memo that I sent out has some of the background. Essentially what we're doing is repeating some of what we've done in the past, or we're setting aside funds for Second Street, the redevelopment grant, and the small project opportunity fund as a carryover. Obviously, the urban renewal area, as far as funding is concerned, this is really a mechanism of property tax growth. When the area was established in 2001, as property values increased, that increase is retained for funding in the district, and that's what the boundary represents. So there's a reference to the urban renewal area as this district, and also the urban renewal plan is kind of the guiding policy. I'll be referencing the document as well. It's available online if you want to look at it there in full detail. But it gets into the goals, objectives, and specific projects. And so that's what we're referencing again as we start this next budget. As I mentioned, if you wanted to follow along, you guys are, like legal discussed last time, a public body. This is being recorded, shared with the public. They have a chance to weigh in. They provided comment in the past. It's possible by next meeting we could have something that I would share with the group. But if you want to follow it from there, you can sign up for notifications, track it on the website. You could even, I don't know if there are openings, but you could apply to be on the budget committee itself if that's something you wanted to do. And all of that is available online. Again, if you wanted to view the meetings, past meetings, all those things are, there's a, similar to the urban development YouTube channel, there's a city channel. So if you wanted to go back to, around that time frame, March, April, May, and get caught up in the previous budget and see how the process works, you could check that out. So as I mentioned, projects reference the urban renewal plan. We also did a action plan in 2015. We had completed some projects and we wanted to see, with some changes in development that had happened and investments, what should be the priorities going forward. And that's shown in the memo as well. There's the 3 columns that shows on the left side, the urban renewal plan, some of the projects in there. And then you move to the right and it touches on some of the things in the business district action plan. Some of the things that we've already completed are the zoning code cleanup project. So that was done back in 2017. Design and construction of Second Street. That's a big one that we've been working on. I'll give you a little bit more context in the next slides. But this slide also shows some of the additional things in the action plan. If you wanted to go down the list, again, Second Street is a big one. We're moving closer to that. Anticipate starting construction this April. As far as the zoning code cleanup project was concerned, there were a lot of complicated overlays, mix of different zones. So to get all those things put together so it's just all the same, hopefully making it easier for development community as they look to acquire different properties. We have seen that. Hopefully making it easier for them to go about the process of redeveloping underutilized parts of the district as a result of that effort. Otherwise, they would have had to go through, let's say it's a different type of industrial or a different use that didn't align with what they wanted to do. They have to go through and change all that. And what this is breaking out is different parts of West Salem being categorized as, so if you're east of Wallace Road, that was considered the town center area. Employment area, obviously the industrial piece where there's still Baxter's, some manufacturing that's up in that area as you go towards 7th and 9th Street. And then Main Street being kind of the 2nd Street Edgewater corridor. So for those of you that were around at the time of the action plan, this is kind of the concept this is the concept that was included in that recommendation. And this shows the improvement of 2nd Street. So 2nd Street, as you know, doesn't extend beyond Patterson. And if you go down 2nd Street itself, it's not to standard. The sidewalks are really small and unsafe. So that's part of this project, is to improve Patterson West as well. Rosemont is to standard. That's a project that was done, I think, back in 2013. So it's completing that full length to Wallace. And this also shows additional north-south connections that need to be improved, and also Marine Drive. So in this iteration, it shows the extension of 2nd Street, and there was also a recommended undercrossing of Wallace Road. So it would go around and wrap around to Marine Drive. Marine Drive, this section, it gets complicated. There are people that are concerned about cutting off access to the park, creating a similar situation that you have at Riverfront, where you have a lot of traffic separating people who want to get to the park. Currently, if you wanted to get down Glen Creek to the park, it's really pretty simple. You don't really have to contend with any of that. This is where, that section of Marine Drive has been hung up at council for years because you have the multifamily residents, and you also have concerns that will impact Wallace Marine Park. So with this extension of 2nd Street and the undercrossing, we wanted to look at that a little closer to see if it was feasible. There's a lot happening on that east side with the Union Street Railroad Bridge, the historic aspect of it, connecting to that, because ultimately you want to, keep people in West Salem, bring people from downtown over to West Salem. So how do you make those connections? And that's something we wanted to look at in a further study. So starting in 2016, we took it from that kind of high level concept and we looked at other local connections. Again, Marine Drive being to the east side, what that would look like. Again, you could see it running around, along the west edge of the Wallace Marine Park, and then coming around, and it shows some of how the trail connections would work. As you see the Union Street Railroad Bridge connecting to the blue is how it would have to maintain ADA access. So you could then, follow the sidewalk along 2nd Street. And if you wanted to go under to the west side of West Salem, you'd go under the undercrossing at Wallace Road. So this is what the local piece looked like. At the same time, we did studies in 2016 and 17, was the same time period as the 3rd bridge was being considered. So we also showed how it's a little bit harder to see, but you can see the faint black lines, how the ramps would connect. So we had to make sure with the investment that it would work with the broader regional connections as well, with the 3rd bridge. So we found both work. It's really expensive. Again, returning to the local improvements as the focus. The undercrossing itself, we found, would be about around 30 million. Would be definitely something beyond the urban renewal area. It would require city bond funding. I don't know, even federal funding potentially. And it's one of those two where it's not like it's critical for those in the community that want to connect East and West Salem, but it's not, it's not like Wallace. It's not carrying a lot of traffic. So it's a pretty big investment for, a smaller impact as far as transportation. You'd mitigate some things off of Wallace, but it wouldn't, most of that traffic's you'd have the third bridge, obviously, that would help divert some of that traffic. But ultimately, a lot of that movement along Wallace is trying to get to I-5 or other parts of the city of Salem. So that was some additional context. So just to give you background, from roughly 2018 to current, given the status of Marine Drive and the undercrossing, we've been focusing on the phase that we can do, which is creating a street where there isn't a street from Patterson to Wallace, and improving from roughly from Girth all the way to Wallace. So that's been the current project. As far as design, we spent the last calendar year, so all of 22 was in design. And so we're at 90%, roughly 95%, wrapping up some final details on design. And then as far as the process goes, this will definitely be a public bid project. It'll go out to bid, hopefully earlier this year in 2023, and then we'll get closer to starting construction in April. So as far as what the budget shows, we show, we have a carryover of funds, and we have the additional 1.5 million to complete the construction piece, so we'll have it fully funded. Also recommending that we recapitalize the redevelopment grant program. We typically have around 2 grants per year at about $150,000 each. Again, this is detailed as a piece of that memo. We have 2 current projects now. One's an environmental cleanup for building reuse, and then another one is for manufacturing. So they did a building add-on and manufacturing equipment investments. So those are the 2 projects that we're working on now. But that memo shows the total breakdown. So as far as the private investment to the public match with the 20% grant. So looking to just have enough funds to meet the demand in the next year. We're seeing on this slide here with the improvements of 2nd Street, a lot of these adjacent properties are in play. They've been acquired by 1 or 2 developers, and they're looking at different redevelopment concepts. So you could really see, hopefully, some change in this area as a result of, this public investment in a street. It's one of those things where, when you look at the goals and objectives, it's to enhance this district, enhance connectivity, make these type of public investments so that hopefully private entities come in and still make similar investments in the building stock, and we see these areas transform. This is an area that was food processing for decades, and a lot of that has moved closer to I-5, luckily, and stayed in Salem. And so now it's just, what can we do to help alleviate that burden? A street like this is a shared resource for the community. So if we can lift that aspect of it, hopefully then the development community can come in and shape the buildings to match the public investment. That's the hope. Hopefully I get too much in the weeds on the background. Does anyone have any questions on budget or 2nd Street or anything like that? Happy to revisit it.
Hey, Tori.
Yeah.
With the going over to Marine Drive, since we passed the bond measure, do we anticipate any issues with seeing progress on that?
I have to look at it. I recall that there is the bond piece. I don't know. I think it's for the a northern section. I'd have to check to see. I don't know that it goes down to Glen Creek. I think it was further north, but I can get back to you on that. I remember it being part of the bond. I just don't think it's our the part that is in our district that we were interested in mostly. I mean, I think as you know, people in West Salem are they want to see any type of progress on Marine Drive. It's been a something in the works for years. Um, I don't think it's anything in the urban renewal area though.
Gotcha.
But I can get back to you on that.
Can I get clarification on the Second Street to Marine Drive? Is that the undercrossing that's forecasted at what 30 million, I believe is what you had mentioned?
Right. Yeah. So when we did this feasibility study, so this was we looked at an overcrossing too, about the same time period. Yeah. So to connect Second Street under to Marine Drive, you'd have to go under Wallace to make that work. And so that undercrossing, yeah, it was estimated at the time, probably more now. I think we anticipate in our budgeting about 3% for inflation a year. So it'd be another, I don't know, since 2018, you know, 5 years. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Corey, I've noticed there's a fair amount of construction going on right now between Patterson, Murlark, and Second Edgewater in that zone. Is that all
Right.
related to upgrading of Second Street, or is that separate development?
No, that's private. So there have been some of the buildings had encroached into our area. So as we've gotten closer to construction, we've notified them that you're encroaching in the right of way. Please do what you can to remove things. And so we've had, I think, most of that removed. I think what's happening now is you're seeing anticipated changes to the building use. I think things are getting torn down and changed out there, tied to. So I guess it's indirectly. It's not tied to Second Street. So as far as our process, we went through council and we have funded a temporary construction easement. So you'll see construction fencing go up the whole length of Second Street. You'll know when we're there. It won't be like, some little equipment here and there. It would be, you'll have the whole area marked off, fenced out, even as you get towards Rosemont, towards Girth, in the residential areas, that I think it'll be probably, the plastic construction fencing, just to clearly define what areas the construction crews can work in and not impact the adjacent properties. So it'll be clearly marked. You'll see it'll be a known activity for Second Street. What you see out there is more tied to, individual developers trying to get things out of the way and maybe knocking things down before we're there to start building the road. Also, if you recall, when ODOT was around last summer and before that, Mark could probably speak to this. There was a lot of staging equipment, along that Second Street area where they do night crews and then they'd move everything off to allow for traffic movement. And a lot of that stuff would be staged in some of these areas. But no, not tied to Second Street.
Hey, Jeremy, I just want to jump in real quick. There's been a lot of discussion on that, the whole Marine Drive, and there's a lot of people that love to say, "Oh yeah, we're completing Marine Drive." That is disingenuous, and that is not the case. It is a small section on the north end, it's never going to ultimately connect in my lifetime to Second Street. There's just not the will to make it happen. So I just want to be clear. And again, this is my perspective of what I hear all the time on that, and which is frustrating for me personally. And I think it would be better for our community ultimately to connect all that and make it happen, but not likely.
Yeah, disappointing, right? I kind of feel like the main purpose of this group is just kind of to look at that single area, kind of where the bridge connects into West Salem, getting West Salem onto Edgewater, and everything else is really just kind of the fluff to try to get that part set up. So it's really interesting to talk about this. Hey Jeff, where do you go to hear more about Marine Drive?
I've just been really involved, like through the chamber specifically in that. I'm really involved in their business advocacy or public policy group, and with that, we talk a lot to city council, mayor, that sort of thing. And so, just when that whole bond process was coming through, there was a lot of conversation about Marine Drive specifically. That I had said, well, wait a minute, what do you mean we're gonna complete Marine Drive? Which is not the case initially, and I don't think that's meant to be malicious. I want to be really clear. It just is. I think people have different visions of what Marine Drive is or what it should look like. My vision, I think, is a little bit more aggressive in that I want it to connect and make West Salem different than what it is now for mobility to either side of Wallace. But I don't think that that's everyone's vision of it. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. There's I feel like we get a lot of pushback from people that aren't in West Salem. But it is what it is.
not to go down the rabbit hole, but interestingly, surveys that were taken across the city for that third bridge were overwhelmingly in favor of that bridge, and it still was kicked out. And that would have solved a lot of things or helped a lot of things had that happened. But there also would have been bonding issues and finances to go along with it. So it's not easy, like all things I believe that are worth discussion. It's not clean. It's not easy. There's always a lot to navigate. But and this is one of those discussions, in my opinion. But I agree with your sentiment.
So
Yeah,
would it be
that's-
safe? Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Would it be safe to say then, I guess, that the undercrossing going under Wallace and Marine Drive isn't going to be happening anytime, Jeff, in your lifetime, is what you stated? Is that a fair statement?
That's my belief system. Yeah, I don't believe it'll happen in my lifetime. I just don't know that unless there's a big change in the political desire, the political will to make some of these things happen. But again, there's financing. I'm not trying to oversimplify this whole thing. There's a lot to it. I just don't see it at this point, a bridge or an undercrossing, overcrossing a second street to a completely realized Marine Drive all the way out to River Bend, I think is what it was initially planned. I think back in 1996 the plan for the whole city, I think, if I recall. And Mark, you've been involved in some of this stuff. Maybe I'm not trying to get you involved in something you don't really want to talk about, but and again, don't need to go down the rabbit hole here. I don't know that that's the intent of this discussion, but
No.
I don't have any specific information on that hasn't already been said. It's political will in different constituencies and budget on everything. I think especially on the crossing, we have to just set that aside, know that that's maybe a longer term goal, but that's not something that we're baking into our immediate plans. And, we got to be focused on what we can do.
Right. I would say
Absolutely.
it doesn't make sense to build the undercrossing. You could connect the west section of Second Street to the east, but where are you going? So, the way that we saw it is you improve second as first phase. Second phase, if there were the political and community will and funding to extend Marine Drive south from Glen Creek, then you'd have those pieces together, and then the last would be the undercrossing. And I was looking at, while you guys were talking, the bond measures. So it looks like the funding for Marine Drive is Harrod to Taven. So like Jeff mentioned, there's sections that are, right away being acquired, plans to make improvements, but it's not, the full length.
without going down a big rabbit hole, I do think at some time in the upcoming year or so, re-looking at the action plan and kind of focusing this group on what the new look is a good thing. I think it's reasonable for people to have questions at this point about exactly where we're at and what's likely to happen, because I've had them myself based on, this has been a long history. Action plan was what, 2015, Tori?
Right.
And even the labeling of some of those areas is, maybe not as accurate as it was back then. So I think we'll just stop there, but I think it's time for a fresh look on some of this. This is as far as a group understanding of where we're going.
Yeah. I'm hoping that, like I said, with Second Street, with that change, hopefully triggers some redevelopment, and then you could really see, that's kind of what this is geared at. What this group is geared at is, doing the public investments so private can repurpose things and change the face, services, uses of, parts of West Salem. So that's my hope. Hopefully it'll be happening here pretty soon. And all that effort, will have been realized to an extent. So that would be, I think, helpful on that. I think that's a great point, Mark. Waiting for an undercrossing and even doing a street as a project, shifting focus to maybe targeting a property or something like that for redevelopment. There are other things that we can do. So I think it'd be a good idea.
And then on that, a thing that I've got caught up in myself is I think everyone on this committee, not speaking for anyone individually, but it's easy to get caught up in thinking we're traffic engineers, and we're not. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into that, and so it's fun to look at the lines on the map and try to think about interconnectivity and how we're gonna move cars around. But that's really not what this group is about. And I've been doing that myself. I think we have to look at the property and redevelopment opportunities, and then the roads will be what they will be when they are, whether it's in Jeff's lifetime or not.
I want to just pay Mark a compliment. Mark is so good at reeling me in. There's times, admittedly, that I get into this macro sense and I want all these great grandeur, visions of grandeur of what's going on. And Mark has got a really good way of pulling me back, saying, you know what, this is our focus is this URA, not all of Salem or not all of West Salem. So Mark, thank you for that. Although it bums me out, I always want to talk big stuff. But I agree 100%. We are here for the URA, and that's what we got to focus on.
So kind of going back to what Mark had just mentioned is, focusing on what we can do. And I have to bring it back up. I missed the last meeting, something had come up. And, the welcome sign, it's my understanding that that is just a mute subject. Is that a dead end?
It's not a dead end. We've been working with ODOT. So it's actually been a couple meetings. We've talked about it a little bit. There are areas that we're talking with ODOT. It's not, like you had mentioned, that key one as you come off Marion Street Bridge would be great, but that's not going to work. So along the linear park that is parallel to Edgewater, we're looking at different locations there. So, next step would be identify a location, make sure ODOT's okay with it, and then kind of have like a concept so we know cost. We need to make sure that it works.
Is there
for ODOT and those groups, obviously, but then, if it doesn't serve the purpose of a gateway, if it doesn't feel like, something, if you're coming off Rosemont or if you're coming off Marion Street Bridge, or it's like welcoming you, it's just random. That's what I'm trying to avoid.
Sure.
So it's not dead.
So instead of going, I feel like there's been a lot of back and forth. This would be a great, location. Oh, sorry, this won't work. Is there a way to have ODOT say, hey, this would work, this would work, this would work. Here's some locations. Why don't you guys, discuss and then make a motion? Is that possible?
Not to my knowledge. It's not. I don't know if I'm getting it. Yeah. No, they're not really in the business of going to communities to say, hey, consider these areas for signs. That's kind of what we do. It's not, I don't mind doing it. I can do it more, so it's more of an urgent priority if that's what the group feels should be the next priority. Most of it has been tied to getting Second Street ready and informing property owners, acquiring additional right of way easements, things like that, so that all that's ready to go. And then hopefully, with redevelopment grants and this public investment, trying to make it easy for these surrounding properties to develop. Those have been like the focuses. So it hasn't been like looking at all sites to locate a sign, but we can make progress over the next year.
Great.
I will say too, with Second Street, sorry, just really quickly, there are other things like that the communities wanted to see, like Festival Street, those kind of things, and even Second Street itself. It'll be off Wallace. Is there a way to, there's been discussion about incorporating art. Is there a way to creatively incorporate like a West Salem district piece to Second Street? We'll keep looking at that too, but I think Second Street can serve more than, it can help, during less travel time in the evening. If there's community desire, we'll have the ornamental light fixtures and electrical hookups, so you could have potentially sections of Second Street shut down, where you could sit and mingle in the street, have lighting set up. So it can serve a lot of different things. And when you look at the action plan, I reference it solely because most of what we talked about we will have done. I mean, the undercrossing and Marine Drive, I mean, that's outside of our control. But all the other pieces are pretty close to being wrapped up. Sorry, Justin, go ahead.
Oh, no, I think you answered my question there. It was if there's not going to be an overpass or an underpass, is the plan to go just to Murlock or all the way to Wallace with Second Street?
Yeah, no, all the way to Wallace.
Okay.
So with the development that's happened there, this half Second Street has been built. It's mirroring that on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be a lot different. We'll have a lot more street trees, and we'll have on the north side of Second Street, the full length, we'll have the ornamental lights similar to Edgewater. So hopefully, it's one of those things. I have to go to Ashley's group. I know Salem Electric, Sam with the business association, they do a lot to. It's a process to get the lights, and Jeff mentions that the seasonal changes of ornamental lights, and especially during the holiday season, we'll have a lot more of those lights. So if that's something that the community wants to see, it'll be a resource that'll be available there to them. So no, it'll be the full length from Wallace. Once this is improved, it'll be from Wallace to Rosemont. The full length of Second will have been updated.
I know sometimes it feels like we don't get a lot done, but that's going to be a big deal when Second Street connects all the way through from Wallace down to Safeway. That's going to change that's going to be one of the biggest changes in West Salem in a long time, as far as just the feel and flow and what opportunities that opens up.
I agree 100%.
Visually notice it too. So separately, we've been so when you look at that girth to Rosemont side, they're all Cobra heads. You don't have the ornamental lights, and so we're going to be reusing. We're going to keep maintain that same theme. So the north side of Second Street, the full length will be the ornamentals. So we'll have like whatever Cobra heads light pictures are on the north side that exist now. They'll just be reused elsewhere along Second Street, and then the ornamental lights will be the full length from as soon as you turn on to Second Street from Rosemont, you'll have that same feel, even in that area that's already been improved.
And that project starts in April of this year. Is that correct?
That's the hope. Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. Yay.
Yeah.
Well, all right then. Any other comments or questions regarding this budget or this planning portion of it for Tori? Not hearing any. I guess we will move on to 2023 calendar year meeting topics.
Really quickly too, as we wrap up the budget side. So you'll see this again. It'll be a little bit different. I provide a little bit more context. We'll have Michael here to speak to the group. So if you have anything between now and then, bring it with you. We'll talk about it then. Okay, so as far as the calendar,
Sam, in other words, you need to bring up the signage for the next meeting to make sure that it gets in there. And I know you will.
for the budget.
Yeah, can we put that in like a small budget?
Yeah, so we have the 200,000. Hopefully it doesn't cost more than that. So that could be, we've had the small opportunity projects, but if there's more that the group wants to allocate to that, we could do that. So that's, we have the 200,000 small project, opportunity project fund. So that's there for something like that potentially.
How often does that get tapped into, Tori?
It doesn't. We've had as carryover. I really haven't. I mean, the grant satisfies a lot of things. If things come up, and then it's nice too because it's a 20% matching grant, so it's 8% funded by the private entity. Something like a sign, obviously that's different. Or if you were to get artwork or something different. I know that like Jason's raised sidewalk safety. We can't do maintenance, so it has to be something new. That's really where it gets kind of complicated, is identifying something that doesn't require like a full study or a maintenance, something that can be like a sign. If we could find the right spot and get like a concept and make sure it works for everybody and we have the financing, it's something that could be, I think, done pretty quickly. I'll make a renewed effort to narrow down the locations and bring more information to you guys so we can prioritize it. But we haven't used it at all.
Typically, what's that carryover dollar amount that's not tapped into?
200,000.
And that's the
So if
beautification.
the group wanted to
fund.
increase it, sorry.
Is that the beautification fund?
It's just called, when you look at a budget document, I think it's just referenced as small opportunity project fund.
Tori, do you know how much is in there now? I know that there's 200 carryover, but if we haven't used that, and it
Just the 200,000. Yeah, no, it hasn't been touched. Just the same amount.
so when it carries over, we don't continue to add to it. In other words, annually. No. Gotcha.
Right. Yep.
Otherwise,
Unless,
that would be way up there.
Yeah, that's something you could, if you wanted to add another 100,000 or something to it, that could be a discussion.
Awesome.
I'm not suggesting that since it's never been touched. I don't know that that's a great use of funds, but certainly something that could be discussed.
Something to think about.
Okay.
Yeah, so on the calendar year, so it's a little bit more busy than previous years. Like I said, typically in July, because it's close to the 4th, and then around December, January, typically when the group has canceled meetings. But we have a meeting in January, so we'll have, it'll be up to the group to determine if you want to cancel. I think it lands on July 6th this year. And then when I shared the calendar, of course, referencing the plans that are kind of the guiding policy for the group. So you have the urban renewal plan, the bylaws, and then the action plan is referenced. Budget process. So this piece will be January discussion, February actions. So the next time you see the agenda, it would be a recommended action. And then it's, obviously up to you guys. You can change the agenda, you can change the action. As a staff person, I just try to help kind of, there'll be our piece too, because we're advisory to the agency. So we'll have our own recommendations. So the way I frame it will be kind of how we would frame it for ourselves. If you guys want changes in the next meeting, then you can talk about it, make changes. So as far as anticipated actions in the next year, starting in February, the budget, there's been talk as we see redevelopment potential around Second Street, establishing exception criteria for the grant program to encourage bigger projects. So we have a 20% matching grant up to 300,000 for, it's really geared at anything that increases this, the money that the group has to work with, the assessed value of the property. So it would be new building construction, new building addition, manufacturing equipment. Usually that's fixed, permanent. It's a heavy investment, so it's also taxed. That's what the kind of parameters of the grant program are. If there's, like in this case, if you want to see something specific around Second Street or certain improvements, you could go up to from 300,000. I know there are grants in downtown that go up to around 780,000. So rather than, if something comes up, let's say this year when we're doing Second Street, it'll be a process to go through and see if the urban renewal agency or city council support, making an exception in a unique circumstance for a project. Rather than do that approach, we'll just learn from areas like downtown where this has been something that's happened in the past, and we could frame our own exception criteria and just streamlines that process. So the city council will still have to just determine that's what we want to do with the grant program. These are what we want to see as far as, if you, as an incentive to get beyond that 300,000 to $780,000 mark, you have to do these things. That's really where the discussion will go. So that's just something to think about. Really looking at that around March timeframe. That's why I raise it. We're busy in budget, and so with the 400,000 as a recommendation in the discussion that we've had today, that would help offset some of that. We would probably have around 1.1 to $1.2 million in the next year to fund a bigger project. So, if that's something, we'll have that discussion in March. And so around that same time period, not as an action, but we can talk about gateway projects, gateway enhancement, entry signs, those kind of things. So that's just something to think about in future meetings is, having an exception criteria like they do in downtown. July is when the chair and vice chair get elected. So that'll be the action for July. And then for small opportunity projects, there could be other action throughout the calendar year.
Tori, can I just jump in here real quick on the July thing specifically? On here, the document says July 6th, which is a Thursday. Our normal meeting day is Wednesday, which would make it July 5th.
5th. Yeah, so it'll probably be in August then. So it's the first meeting of the next fiscal year.
August 2nd.
So do we need to have a discussion or anything about this calendar as far as a motion to cancel, or is it just a simple conversation?
Whether it's just simple.
Cancel it.
Yeah, I think it's more of a motion. Like if you guys were to change, so the last time the group did anything like that was to change a location. Back when we had a meeting location, we moved from the library was getting complicated as far as staff setting up, and so moved the meetings to downtown. And so that was like the first action. Like as a group, we're going to decide to move to downtown. Sorry. So that for canceling a meeting, that action is not required.
Well, while Tori is working on that spit that went down the wrong pipe, do we want to have a quick conversation? Yeah, something. Any conversation about July 5th? That meeting that is incorrect on the calendar or the document that was sent out. What is everyone's thoughts on July 5th, whether we carry on a meeting or whether we cancel that meeting?
I don't have all my plans for next year, but I know I'm definitely going to be out of town on July 5th.
Okay.
I am as well.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but July
I think
4th.
I'm out of town too, I think.
As am I.
Okay. Well, that's half of the group, and we need half plus one for a quorum. So it kind of makes logical sense to say that we might not, let's just agree that we're going to cancel that unless anyone feels differently. Justin, you're okay with it? Mark Smith, you good with that? Okay. Tom? Okay. All right. Well, then,
I'll update that so it's correct on there. Sorry about that. So I'll show that as August for the
okay.
chair and
Thank
vice
you.
chair. Sorry.
Thank you, Tori. Thank you, everyone.
So the last section was on updates. So if you guys see anything, or if you want to hear from anybody in the next year, or if you want it changed, I know that you really enjoy the ethics and public meetings. I think that's why Samantha was gone in December. She's like, "Oh, it's ethics and bylaws. I'm not going to be available for that one." Just kidding. I've heard that enough now. No, if there's something else you want to see or hear, in anticipation of like the next meetings or what the calendar year is shaping out to be, send an email to me or Mark or Jeff, and we'll talk about it and make sure it's on there.
Cool. Awesome.
Skipping back real quick to the sign thing, not trying to locate it, but is there is there a collection of approved art, fonts that we can use? What can West Salem do? So just setting aside physicality of where it goes and everything, just curious if what the operating parameters might be there. And that would give
it's tough.
to do one in the meantime is where kind of also where I'm going, something to focus on.
It's a tough one. So there was a sign that was done recently in North Salem area, and it got the community all involved, and I think it was tied, I don't know, it's Public Works or Parks. There is a standard sign that's the blue logo. You see it as you enter the city of Salem from onto Wallace Road as you come. I go to McMinnville a lot. So if you're coming that direction south into West Salem and you enter it, most of when you see it around town, it's the logo Salem sign. It's not really anything particularly unique, in my opinion. So that's where it gets. The process could be a bit nuanced. You engage in the public. Everyone, this is a subjective. Some people might be fine with a simple sign, or some people might just object to having city funds pay for a sign in general. But then you have the other side where they really wanted to reflect the unique character of that particular area, and that's where it gets interesting to arrive to a decision. I think I'd have to check with Public Works when they did and where that specific location was, but I know that it involved like a separate committee, to bring the groups together so they could debate on, I think they had 3 different design options. So I don't know what the final outcome was. I'm not aware of a sign being installed, so I don't know if it just is still there as far as like debating on what the final sign looks like. I can get more information on that, but that's where in my mind, I gravitate to it being more art. Art doesn't have, we have, there's the art community where they want to see more public art in general. There's a lot, depending on how you see the public art, a little bit less say in how that art comes about and what it looks like. I don't know if we could engage an artist that is looking at incorporating like a West Salem district specific sign in an artistic fashion that can kind of tick off both boxes as far as satisfying that community art piece as well as referencing West Salem.
Yeah, I nominate Samantha as chair of a subcommittee to do community outreach and achieve consensus on what the design should look like.
Totally makes sense. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, it was an interesting sign. If I can find it, I did get it because I knew this was a topic. I wanted to see what the process has been most recently, and so it was a pretty eclectic sign. So if I can find it in my email, I'll forward it to the group so you can have it as reference. Yeah, it depends on how we go about it. I think, I mean, the community is going to want to, you know, and if everyone sees it, it's a public investment. You know, we have this group obviously where they can weigh in. I don't know if it will require a separate subcommittee to Mark's point, possible, but we'll see. Let's narrow down locations and then, yeah, see where it goes from there.
If we were to go back and look at notes, the first time this was mentioned was probably, I would say, 3 years. Is that correct? 2 years? Jeff, Mark, do you guys remember?
Something like that.
It's been longer than that.
It's
It's
been
been
a
a long
long
time.
I just feel like we're gonna do this. Like I'm on a mission at this point. So
There's a motion on the table.
Yeah, there was I forget who it was. There's a city councilor who later became a city councilor who was trying to get that same spot off Marion Street Bridge as a sign location. That was before I even started doing work in West Salem. So it's been a long time.
For what it's worth, I know it's not going there because of traffic. I was coming in from Kaiser into Salem, which I don't do often. And there's that sign that as you enter on River Road, and it's a raised berm, it's big rocks, and something had absolutely annihilated that sign. And there was a crew out there with like a little crane, like adjusting granite or rock or whatever that was. I mean, the cars hitting that is a real thing. And that particular location is nothing like the base of the bridge. So, I mean, they just destroyed whatever was there.
wow.
Yep, got hit by a car. That's true. We just had to fix it.
You're aware of this story?
Being hit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's all I had on the budget and the calendar update.
Okay. Well, with that, then we are kind of entering the third and final phase of the agenda, which is getting updates from the group. So with that, Sam or Jeremy, you want to give us a quick update on WSBA?
You bet. January 11th, we've got a morning greeter scheduled at Capitol Manor. And what they're going to be doing is they're going to host a full breakfast. They've got their own restaurant in there. I believe it's called the 50s or something rather. So that'll be kind of exciting. And then on the 26th, our guest speaker of January is Carlos Ruiz, the principal at West Salem High School. So pretty excited about that. So membership letters just went out right before the first of the year. So a lot of those are coming in. I think we kicked out around 240. So looking for a large pool of memberships for 2023. So exciting. That's all I have.
Great, thank you.
Oh, quick question.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I apologize. What did everyone think of the new lights that we chose for Edgewater and Wallace? The Christmas
I
lights.
loved them.
Yeah?
Yeah, I love all that stuff. I'm such a homer for old town kind of feel. So I noticed some of the new ones. Seemed like there was more new ones on Wallace than there was Edgewater, but that could be my perception.
I think you're right.
I don't know.
I love
Yeah.
them too. They look great.
Yeah, they look great. Thank
Excellent.
you.
Good.
Well, with that, is there any other updates, community updates? I am trying to think of what else we usually update on. The Edgewater activity is usually updated by Jason. He's not here. Anybody know anything about what's going on down at Edgewater? Tori does. He's just being
Well, I know
bad.
about the neighborhood association. I'm speaking of the neighborhood association tonight. So if anyone wants to join me, I'll be there. Last time I was there, I think it was last I don't know. I don't think it was December. It was November, and so we spoke at that. Oh, it was about the urban renewal clean. We did an urban renewal plan cleanup for all the urban renewal areas, and West Salem was one. We had to go to the neighborhood association, and it was from 6. I think we got out like 9:30, and so it was kind of a smaller group. I was like thinking to myself, you know, you might get more people if there was like a finishing, you know, kind of estimated finishing time. You know, 6 to 8 is, I think, doable. But yeah, I just kept going. It felt like it was going to go till like 10 o'clock.
Oh,
It
that's
was tough.
crazy.
They have in some cases, which is why I kind of dropped out of going to them. No offense to that group, just man, they would go forever.
What's the date on that? I know that they changed it.
They changed it. I think it's the first. So I meant it'll be easier for us now. I think it's the first Wednesday of every month, and they
So
meet
it's
at Ross now.
in
So it'll
person.
be tonight. Yeah, in person. Yeah.
Speaking of in
Yeah, I
person,
wasn't being critical
I was
either.
just gonna,
It was just long. It kept going.
when are we
Samantha,
gonna?
go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, speaking of in person, when are we gonna start being in person?
So you'll have to make a decision. I think the way the boards and commissions have gone is to keep it at Zoom. I think the community, depending on how many people watch the YouTube, we'd have to still stream to YouTube. I know the Downtown Advisory Board, they meet the Urban Development Department. So it has to be like a special consideration. I don't know if it's like the agency approves it. Like it's kind of like one off. I think most boards and commissions are on Zoom. I think there's a state law that says, you know, with the COVID situation where, you know, if you start with virtual, you have to do what you can to accommodate that audience. And so I think the way downtown has handled it is to stream their meetings. So they'll meet in person, but they'll stream it. So that's something, you know, if you wanted to do it, it would have to be probably something like that where you meet in person at the urban development department. First, I'd have to like, if you know, the group, that would be an action. So you guys have to make a motion and say that's what you want to do, and then we'd have to see if that's something that can be done. And then you could potentially have it in person at that location and stream it.
I remember that conversation and that we wouldn't go back into in person until city council did, because there needed to be some technology with the city of Salem updating where there can be live stream and video along with in person. And it seems like the city's there at this point. I'm not raising a motion, but I do think that it would be worthy of a conversation, and maybe next meeting carve out 5 minutes for a quick discussion and maybe a motion on it. Give everyone an opportunity to think about it.
Cool.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, with that, anything else for the good of the order? Not hearing any. Awesome. Great to see everyone this morning. Always enjoy seeing a full group at these meetings. Minus Jason, of course. It's too bad. It would have been awesome to get the full boat. That would have been really fun. Haven't had one of those in a while. So with that, hope everyone has a great day and enjoy the rest of your week. We will see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Hi guys. Thanks, Tori.
You.